Good afternoon. I'm here in Bahrain Fintech Bay today, meeting with Mr. Khalid Saad, the CEO of the company in the beautiful Arcapta building in Bahrain Bay. Khalid is here to introduce us to Bahrain Fintech Bay and what it does for our Unscripted show, and to explain to us his plans for the company and its contribution to the economy of our Kingdom of Bahrain and the broader Arabian Gulf and Middle East. So welcome to the program, Khalid.
Thank you for having me, and I'm delighted to be on Unscripted.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your work experience, and before that your university experience.
Sure, absolutely. So Khalid Saad, 35 years old. I went to school in the Makhalloon National School here in Bahrain, and then I pursued my education in the United Kingdom, both the University of Exeter and Imperial College. For my bachelor's degree, I did a mixture of computer science and electronic engineering, and then for my master's, I did that in management. I started my career in London in a company, American firm called SEI, which focused on both investments and technology. I did that for just under a year and a half, and I had to come back for family reasons. After that, I joined Ernst & Young in their advisory practice. I was part of what was known at the time as the Islamic Financial Services Group. And then I thereafter joined the Bahrain Economic Development Board, looking at business development for financial services. And that's where I got a really good view in terms of what's been actually happening within the sector in Bahrain, the wider region, and globally. From there on, the opportunity for fintech obviously came up as the fintech ecosystem was developing in this country over the past 3.5, 4 years, from which I was fortunate enough to also be working on the Fintech Bay project since it was incepted, and then I decided that I wanted to pursue this full-time, and obviously moved to Fintech Bay officially at the beginning of February last year. So it's been just under 2 years officially in Fintech Bay.
That's excellent. It's beautiful. It's great to see a fully functioning co-working space in Bahrain. And it seems to me that fintech is a great niche for Bahrain in terms of our core competencies as a country and our comparative advantage as an economy. Considering all of the banks that are here, all of the core competencies that have been developed with the Bahrainis in the banking sector, it's a great synergy. I mentioned to you before the interview about some of the fintech startups here, like Rain, the cryptocurrency exchange, and some of the others. So I suppose, the niche is great, but the question I would have is, how do you get the startups to go from where they are now to being, getting venture funding and then getting acquired by PayPal or by, you know what I mean?
I think, to go back to your first point about fintech being good for the ecosystem of Bahrain, I think if we look at financial services, it's the second largest contributor to GDP, 17%. So it's a very sizable sector. And I think this, coupled with the country's ambition to be an entrepreneurial and a startups hub within the region, bodes very well. And I think for me personally, I think fintech is a great catalyst for helping one not only future-proof and develop the financial services sector, but also to spark the development in the whole entrepreneurial startups ecosystem. And we've seen that over the past few years, the number of fintechs or startups and entrepreneurs that took interest in being in Bahrain, whether from locally, regionally, or internationally, has really grown. And this has resulted in the number of fintechs in this country going from anywhere from 20 to 30 a few years back to over 80 now. And I anticipate that if the trend continues, we'll probably be looking at 100 by the end of the year. So I think positioning-wise and in terms of attractiveness, that's been great. What has helped, I think, tremendously, and for example, you mentioned RAIN and the cryptocurrency platforms or exchanges or crypto asset companies. Regulation was an important piece where Bahrain put in a forward-thinking regulatory framework. It started off with accepting these companies in the regulatory sandbox environment, which has been an absolute boon for entrepreneurs, but also then moving on and putting a dedicated license for a crypto asset services company. And so for a lot of these companies, part of probably growing and scaling up is getting that seal of approval and kind of vote of confidence through obtaining a license from the regulator. And we're talking about the weight of a Central Bank of Bahrain license that gives that. I think we're at that stage, and I think with Fintech, we could probably, the likelihood of getting a scale up that will grow, attain Series A, B, C, or further funding is probably maybe more likely, given the numbers that are actually coming in and the fact that they're dealing with large players such as financial institutions. I think the development in Fintech is obviously has an effect positively also on the wider entrepreneurial ecosystem.
That's true.
And we've seen that the startup ecosystem as a whole is growing. And I hope, whether it's in Fintech or not in Fintech, but even in other sectors, that we get companies that are actually scaling up and growing sizably from Bahrain, whether it's indigenous companies or companies that have either hubbed out of Bahrain, but not from Bahrain, or scaling up from Bahrain. And I think the likelihood of that is probably more now than ever. So I'm pretty excited in terms of the potential of Fintech, and definitely pleased that Bahrain is definitely on the global map now when it comes to Fintech.
That's great. Yeah, I noticed that just from my own research that some of the companies, even the ones located here, are owned by expats. So, and I think that's perfect for Bahrain to be a conduit for local as well as foreign direct investment. I know from your EDV experience that the EDV promotes foreign direct investment, and if you look at places like Silicon Valley, where I think 1/3 or more of the startups are founded by foreigners, you need to kind of create that environment, and with the assumption or the expectation that it will be a win-win ultimately for the local economy and in terms of local employment. What is your proposition to entrepreneurs around the region who want to, who maybe have an idea to start a fintech startup but don't know how to go about it? I mean, what are your terms with the entrepreneurs?
Sure. I think if you look at traditionally the financial services sector is obviously given there was some sort of high barrier of entry due to the regulations that are required to ensure that nothing obviously arbitrary happens. There's obviously a fiduciary responsibility towards people and obviously their finances. That still remains intact, and obviously that will not change. But given the changes that are happening globally because of Fintech, especially post the global financial crisis, when we started seeing a lot of the financiers that used to run these well-regulated financial institutions have jumped out to disintermediate and disrupt these institutions. More, let's call it, innovative and forward-looking regulatory frameworks have started to come or be put into place. And obviously here in Bahrain, the central bank launched a sandbox. Now the regulatory sandbox, probably for those that maybe might not know about it, is a light touch regulatory environment where people can come in, start experimenting within a predefined